Now, last time we spoke, I was a vegan. I wasn't a Christian yet. Obviously, I've been through quite a lot publicly as well, and we can touch upon that if you want to. But I've got one thing I want to say is I just can't believe how radically eating meat has changed me constitutionally. But don't take my word for it.
I was going to say, that's amazing.
I didn't use that. That's the first time I've had abs in my whole life. What's going on? Tell me the science behind this.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to react to a video that is on Russell Brand's channel. He did an interview with Paul Saladino, and it's titled, it's this one here, Why We're Sick and How to Fix It, a deep dive with Paul Saladino. This was published, I think, 3 days ago. So I follow Russell Brand. He got very interesting to me when he started to challenge Big Pharma back in the period of time that we all won't mention, the dark days. But he was very adamant about voicing his opinion on, being forced to take our medicine, so to speak. So I really started following him then. But he's given some really good interviews, and this one I think would be worth watching. Now, if you don't know who Paul Saladino is, he was one of the OG carnivores, and he's actually a psychiatrist, or he was trained as a psychiatrist, but he never worked as one. And he kind of got out of the whole field of psychiatry and medicine in a sense, because he was not happy with what he saw in the institutionalized medicine realm. So he says a lot about this type of thing in an interview that I saw him do. Well, it was really a podcast where him and Nick Norowitz started talking about some serious stuff recently. And I did a reaction video to that, and it's on my channel if you're interested. But I was really shocked because last time I saw Paul Saladino, he was running around a grocery store with no shoes and no shirt, and he was harassing people. That was back, I guess, in his early days. He was trying to be funny, I'm sure, but completely different from what I thought. He was very based, and, I was shocked for somebody that eats like 200 to 300 grams of carbs a day now. I think he's mostly animal-based, but he's eating a lot of honey and some other things. Like, he changed his diet up, so... But he did that, like, I think a year ago or something. So he did that before the most recent carn apocalypse that we've got going on now with everybody eating carbs and stuff. He was one of the first, I guess, to do that, or that I know of. But anyway, I'd like to listen to this and react to it because I think it's probably a good interview based on what I've seen. So why don't we get into this?
Russell Brand,
Russell
controversial conspiracy theorist.
Trying to bring real journalism to the American people.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me for Stay Free with Russell Brand today with Paul Saladino.
He's quite the strange ranger. If you've never seen Russell Brand, there's a lot of shirtless stuff that goes on. Just saying.
No, MD, you are going to love this interview. I became a carnivore because of this man. He's written books about being a carnivore, and he convinced me to go from vegan all the way to carnivore. It's brilliant. It's a fantastic conversation that covers the kind of holiness that comes to mind when you hear the intricate beauty of the way that the human body works, right down to the subcellular level, and what I would have to describe as a kind of demonic evil in institutionalized food production. This is a MAHA podcast. This is a Make America Healthy Again podcast that covers concepts like nutrition and vaccines and wellness. Okay, let's get into the Paul Saladino interview right now. Paul Saladino, thank you so much for joining me for Stay Free with Russell Brand.
It's good to see you again, my friend.
You look well. Now, last time we spoke, I was a vegan. I wasn't a Christian yet. Obviously, I've been through quite a lot publicly as well, and we can touch upon that if you want to. But I've got one thing I want to say is I just can't believe how radically eating meat has changed me constitutionally. But don't take my word for it.
I was going to say, that's amazing.
I didn't use that. That's the first time I've had abs in my whole life. What's going on? Tell me the science behind this.
Well, I'll tell you the science, and then I want to hear more about how you feel, because
What's interesting is that Russell Brand was like, if you knew what he was like before, you kind of, you know how you imagine the hippies in the drum circle, you know, and they're all high and they're like, yeah, man, you know what I mean?
I want to give strokes and warm fuzzies to Bubble Man for creating limitless bartering periods.
Bobby, grab the feather for me.
But I wasn't finished with my heart song.
That was Russell Brand. He was known to be promiscuous, you know, that kind of thing. It's the whole like 80s trope of, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll type of thing. But he was probably high like most of the time. But he actually had a change of heart, you know, when he got older and he got clean and all this kind of stuff. And he recently became a Christian, so that's a big change or whatever. But I had no idea that, this is interesting, that Paul Saladino made Russell Brand a carnivore, because, you know, everybody looks at Paul Saladino and they're like, traitor, you know, when it comes to carnivore, because he's eating honey, he's eating bee vomit. But, you know, I don't care what he eats, but it sounds like he's eating mostly meat still, and then he has whatever else he has. But it's interesting that he's the one who, you know, got him to be a carnivore. And I don't know what Russell Brand's eating, but it'll be interesting to find out.
I remember seeing you in DC, and you told me in January of this year that you'd start eating meat again. And I thought that was so cool. So, I mean, you just think about it. Humans throughout our history have always treasured meat. You look at any group of hunter-gatherers on the planet now, and they treasure meat. It's at the top of their sort of hierarchy of foods they want to eat. And they eat animals from nose to tail. And so on the first podcast that we did, we talked a little bit about these nutrients in meat, but there are so many unique nutrients in animal foods, whether you're eating chicken or beef or fish or whatever, that just don't occur in plants. Plants are great, but a lot of nutrients don't occur in plants, or they don't occur in any appreciable quantities in plants. So when you are not eating meat as a vegan, which is, you know,
or they're not bioavailable at all. Like, our bodies can't do anything with it because there's so many anti-nutrients. And remember, as our beloved Chafee always says, glory be to him, the extra ruminant, that plants are trying to kill you. Just a friendly reminder from the cult of Chafee. I'm just kidding.
That's your right. You're a sovereign human. You can make an intentional choice. It's very, very hard to get these nutrients that are central to human thriving, right? And I listed them out last time, and I'll give you a sense of them again. Things like creatine, which gets a lot of press today, but other things like carnitine or anserine or taurine, all of these nutrients, they're critical. Did I lose you?
No, I'm really focused, because in a sense, what's fascinating is this is a time where people are reluctant to make essential or universal claims, i.e., well, at the chemical level, a man is a man, a woman is a woman. And I suppose, like, as we discussed previously, I was a vegetarian from the age of 14 because I love Morrissey and I love the Smiths, and someone showed me footage of abattoirs and the way that animals are treated, which I thought was appalling then and I think is appalling now. And I suppose there's been...
What does that have to do with the Smiths and Morrissey? I don't know. Maybe Morrissey is like this huge vegan that I didn't know about. Maybe he's running around, you know, throwing like red paint on grocery store meat sections. I don't know. Let me know if you know anything about that, because I love the Smiths. That would be sad.
In a spate of documentaries, even within the last 5 years, that sort of made the claim that you don't need meat. And in fact, meat is bad for you. And it's actually, your arteries and cholesterol. But what I can tell you empirically is, since, like, you know, what I always felt when I was a vegan is I like the excuse my language, taste of meat. So I was always eating, like, I was a sucker for all that Beyond stuff, which I now kind of would regard as a sort of a globalist, imperialist consumer, like, scam. Like, you know, I liked all that fake meat. Even earlier versions, like Linda McCartney, God rest her eternal soul. I was always chomping down on a Linda McCartney sausage, the late wife of the great Beatle, Paul McCartney. They had a brand of vegetarian sausages. Then when I went from vegetarian to vegan, Paul, it's like, oh my word, I can't eat anything. I was making these bizarre concoctions to get like some sort of paste that had meatiness to it. It's like I was trying to synthesize it the whole time. Now, I still have the kind of moral quandaries, but I suppose that's sort of separate from diet. And in a way, what is morally and ethically suggested is that you should be eating meat that is reared locally and killed respectfully. Even though death is always terrible and there's something brutal about, you know, death. Life eats death. That's the price, man. And like making those universal claims in this climate seems somehow to be challenging.
I mean, I read this book when I was younger. It was called The Tracker. There's a guy who grew up on the East Coast in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey named Tom Brown. And he was apprenticed to this. It's a true story, I believe. He was apprenticed to this Apache Indian gentleman who sort of gave him Native American philosophy, ways of life, and hunting. And he told this Native American elder told Tom Brown something, that in order for something to live, something else must die. This is the way of life. And so this ethical quandary around eating meat, I think that we have it because we are removed from nature. If you and I were in a tribe in the jungle here in Costa Rica or in the forest of, you know, the northern United States where Native Americans were, wherever, we would not have an ethical qualm about eating meat. What we would do is we would hunt it respectfully, and because we hunted it, we would eat it from nose to tail. We would eat all of the organs. We would eat the bone marrow. We would use the hide and the hooves, and we would eat all of the animal. We would waste nothing, and we would be very grateful to this sort of cycle of life. You know, all of these sort of indigenous tribes have some sort of cosmology. They all see themselves as something, a part of something bigger, right? We've lost that. You go to the grocery store, you have a disembodied steak, and we've lost, dare I say, the spirituality of eating meat. It was part of, I mean,
you know, it's very interesting that people don't really think about what he's talking about here, that we're so far removed from having to work for our dinner kind of thing, that, you know, I think that's why a lot of people are viewing it as odd or wrong or bad to actually kill and eat an animal, is because, you know, we get a pack of steak that's wrapped from the grocery store, you know, and we get our processed foods, and there's not a face on it. We don't have to whack it with a hammer. I mean, it's like, it's too convenient. We get foods from all over the world, you know, we're just marinating food all the time, you know. But if you look at how humans, you know, without modern conveniences would eat, I mean, that wasn't a thing. So death was a part of your life because you wouldn't live if you didn't kill. I know it sounds bad, but I mean, it's true. And we need those nutrients. That's how we're made. We're made to eat those nutrients, and that's where we get it from. And I know that a lot of scientists nowadays think they're God, but they can't just replace everything that came before or everything that was made in nature with something fake or synthetic and expect it to work, because that's just not how it works. Scientists are not actually God. They can do a lot, but, you know, it's just something to think about.
Perhaps, I mean, it may sound overblown, but it's sacramental in some ways. And the nutrients in meat, like I said earlier, are so unique for humans that when you go from not eating meat to eating meat, you have a step function change in the way that you think, the way that your energy is, your libido, your vitality. And the other thing I would mention here is that I think that as much as humans have an ethical imperative to re-participate in that cycle of life and understand and respect the nutrients that these animals give us and to live accordingly, I think that as humans, and I think this, you know, this is sort of a Christian perspective. Like, our purpose is also to do the most good in the world. And so how do you do the most good in the world? How are you the best conduit for the ideas that you believe need to go into the world? You need to nourish yourself, right? You need to nourish your brain and your body. And so I've always thought eating meat is part of supporting myself. I do a lot of things in my life. We don't know each other that well personally yet, but I'm very intentional about the way that I live my life across all aspects, because I sort of see so many aspects of my life as sacred, and I want to protect this vessel. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I think about these things. I try to get good sleep, like I'm trying to be a good vessel for something bigger than me, for something in the world, and to put ideas into the world that help people. And so nutrition is a part of that. And I think you've seen that now. And so there is this other ethical side of it that, hey, if you are a more lit up human, if you are a more energetic, clear thinking human, you're doing good in the world. That's really, I think, a very high purpose for these animals in your life. They're nourishing you and you're putting it back into the world. And one day you will die and go back to the earth too.
These are excellent points. And I think your early remark that we are detached from nature is an important one, that we've been decoupled from a deep reality that we have to live in harmony with because of recent deep education into how systems of control operate. I know that whether it's the choice that was made to use blue light instead of red light behind these screens, or any number of nutritional choices, I know that what you talk about, a kind of nutritional state of subjugation, is what's required by the systems that seek to emulate and counterfeit the divine power that you're describing. It's not an accident, but deliberate. It's deliberate that you eat food that makes you tired and bloated and ineffective. It's deliberate.
I agree with him 100% on that. There's not a mistake. A lot of people who say, well, doctors and the status quo authoritarians who believe that, oh, well, they're just ignorant and they just don't know yet that really we're not getting the right nutrition, and the way that we, we're doing the no fat and the high carb, the thing that made us sick. Like they just don't know yet. If you think that the people who organize all of this don't understand what damage it's causing and that they're not profiting off of it, that's you being naive, because they do understand. I mean, there's a lot of doctors who are dumber than a box of rocks, I'll give you that, and they haven't picked up on really anything. And then there's some who actually want to do things correctly and want to help people, like Dr. Berry, Dr. Chafee. They want to actually heal people, fix them once and for all, not give them pills and send them on their way, but they actually want to do good. So there's, a lot of different people with different motives, but the overarching global control of a lot of this stuff is sinister and, in my opinion, pure evil. So that's my take on it, at least.
That you stare at screens that hypnotize you and dumb you down, that certain chemicals are to be found in the water sources. You can see that while looking at your bright face, that you're a person that's coursing with creatine and nutrition and collagen, and for all I know, methylene blue and tallow. Do you...
Not methylene blue, but the other ones, yes.
Tell me why no methylene blue, Paul.
Methylene blue is an interesting one. This gets a little technical. But I love what you're saying there. And I wonder about that. I think that it's a very sinister reality that we're living in if there are powers that be that are actually trying to subjugate us and make us dumber. It's very possible. And certainly with the devices, I think that the blue.
So I want to stop there for a minute, because this whole methylene blue thing is really, I don't know if it's still going on, it was a big deal like there for a while. And I think it's worth understanding what this is. I've used methylene blue in the lab. I didn't eat it. Like, I've used it in the lab for years for different, analytical testing. So I think people really need to understand what this is. Okay, since he brought up methylene blue, I figured I would just mention what it is and why people are talking about it. People are ingesting it and saying that they're getting a lot of health benefits from it, but when I heard that, I was like, what? Because I used methylene blue in the laboratory for analytical tests for years. That's the equivalent of saying, hey, why don't you go over there and grab that, toluene and like turn it up, or go get some of that acetone and drink it. That's how dumb that sounded to me. So methylene blue is not something that you find in nature. It's a synthetic chemical that was first created as a fabric dye, and it was later discovered to have medicinal properties. While some people are taking it as a supplement, it's not edible and it's not a natural substance, and it should only be used under medical guidance due to potential serious side effects. It's synthetic. It was made in 1876 by a German chemist and not naturally occurring at all. So medicinally, it's used against malaria and actually another anemia. But more recently, it's gained popularity as a supplement to enhance cognitive function, though this is an off-label use and its benefits are not well established. Potential risks: when used as a supplement, methylene blue can cause serious side effects like serotonin syndrome, especially when combined with other medications that affect serotonin. It also can cause a blue tongue, which is a side effect of the staining pigment. It's making a lot of other organs, I'll guarantee you, blue. So it's staining things in your body, which this, in my opinion, is not a good idea. There are some things that they find out you might have some first off like benefits from, but what you have to think about with stuff like this, like short-term benefits are one thing, but if you don't know what it's going to do long-term, that's a different story. And something like, I don't know how effective it is with malaria, but it's one of those things where, okay, if you have something like that going on and it can help you, you take it short-term, and it's like a risk-reward type of thing. But just going, hey, I'm thinking better or something if I take this, or I got rid of my brain fog taking this. Like, that's not a reason, in my opinion, to actually risk taking something like this. Because like I said, it's mainly used as like a lab chemical. So, ew.
Blue lights and the flickering of the devices is designed to addict us. As far as the food goes, yeah, we can talk about this too. I don't know. I think that nourished humans are likely to be free-thinking humans, and free-thinking humans are a little more difficult to control than tired and humans that are just fatigued. And that humans that are thinking clearly are going to question the system. So there's a very sinister potential reality there. As far as the methylene blue conversation goes, so methylene blue is a complex molecule that actually moves electrons down the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. So I don't want to get too technical here, but the way that we make energy as humans is we harvest electrons from the food that we eat. We pass those electrons through a transport chain in the inner mitochondrial membrane of every cell of our body except the red blood cells. And at the end of that mitochondrial electron transport chain, those electrons end up in water, and that electromotive force, so passing the electrons.
Okay, so he's going off in nerd land. I try not to do that because you put people to sleep, but hopefully he's not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole, because just saying.
Down the chain creates a gradient of hydrogen, basically protons, hydrogen ions, and then moving down the concentration gradient creates ATP. So there's a little nanomotor inside your mitochondria, and the protons moving back down their concentration gradient creates ATP. It's a really exquisitely elegant system. But the movement of electrons between all of those complexes, and they're numbered, is how we create an electromotive force to move protons and to create a concentration gradient. Now, methylene blue will move the electron down the electron transport chain, which is a good thing if you have a blockage in your electron transport chain. But most of us don't. There are definitely some people with severe neurodegenerative diseases that have, I would say, severe mitochondrial issues. And in that case, methylene blue can be this adjunct, and it can move the electron around the blockage. But if you don't have a blockage in your electron transport chain, methylene blue is making less energy per electron. So you're actually getting less energy out of the food you eat, which is a bad thing. You want that electron transport chain to function optimally. So I think for most people, methylene blue is probably not something you want to be using at a mitochondrial level. The reason it gets a little tricky is because methylene blue also has effects on the neurotransmitters. It's a monoamine oxidase A inhibitor. And so it's going to affect serotonin levels in the brain. And so I think some people feel good with methylene blue. It doesn't mean that your energy production at the level of the mitochondria is better. And, remarkably, at high doses, methylene blue will turn your heart blue. This has been shown, and your brain.
Like I said, it turns your insides blue, and like what he's saying with all the blah, 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 sparky is short-term gain on this is not really something that's real. You know what I mean? It's like it gives you, makes you feel some kind of way, but long term, it's really not something you want to do, except for there may be conditions, is what he's saying, that it would be helpful for. So look at that face. He said it turns your brain blue. That's funny.
So it may not be benign.
I see it's done some wonderful things to my urine and my tongue. But
Yes.
I do enjoy looking down and seeing sweet blue urine. And I enjoyed very much your description of the elegance of the mitochondrial system and the complexity of electron manipulation and conveyance. And whenever I hear something articulated by someone who understands it, I feel the approximate awe of a heavenly creator. I think such complexity could not occur as a result of randomized events, even over billions of years. Elsewise, why would we regard patterns with such wonder, whether in mathematics, which, by the way, why would it exist if there was no intelligence, and music and symmetry and art? The hallmark and presence of God is evident in all God's creation, and I am just in awe of the wonder of that, and thank you for explaining it so beautifully and clearly. Now, when you said that about the potential impact and methylene blue might make you feel better, but it might not necessarily be doing it in a way that's ultimately beneficial. It reminded me of once someone telling me that what caffeine is doing is kind of sort of stretching you and creating a sort of a stimulated state that you're going to pay a price for down the line. I mean, in the Buddhists say borrowing from your future self. Do you think it belongs in that kind of category? Is that what your concern is?
Yes, in some ways. And I mean, we can talk about caffeine. It's no one likes it when we talk about caffeine, Russell, because 90% of the world drinks coffee. What's that?
Because we're all addicted to it. I remember that famous study where they tried to study the efficacy of caffeine. But as I recall,
I drink coffee. Okay, so first let me just lay that on the line. I don't drink as much of it as I used to, because I did a no coffee challenge and I went off it for like a month or two, and it did improve things, but I ended up like falling off the wagon after that, because I'll drink it if I have a headache, and I got a couple of headaches, and once you get a little sip of it again, it's like, if you really like coffee, it's easy to fall back into the ditch. But anytime you talk about caffeine in the nutrition space, like, people get really mad, like oh no, coffee's good for you, or you know what I mean, like you're shaming them or something. And I drink it. I can't say anything, but yeah, we are all addicted to it. I mean, whether you're addicted to the caffeine or you're addicted to just the ritual. I have a really big problem breaking that ritual every morning. So, or now it's not every morning, but it's 3 times a week, that kind of thing.
control group were able to drink caffeine, but the group that didn't have caffeine were not only not having caffeine, they were also in withdrawal, and that was the the study didn't account for the fact that everyone was in a doubly suboptimal state. And so, I mean, I don't want to depress people. I mean, I might as well tell you that this is caffeine in its purest and most wonderful form in that drink. Do you drink caffeine, Paul?
I do not. Wow. I have in the past. So when I was in my medical training, I used caffeine some, and I would get like heart palpitations, heart fluttering, and I stopped it many years ago. I went through bad withdrawals, but it's tricky. So there are a few things about caffeine. The first is to know that the half-life of caffeine is 5 to 6 hours. So the caffeine that you're drinking now, Russell, will not be even, it will perhaps be half metabolized by the time you go to sleep in 10 hours, depending when you go to sleep. I mean, it's probably 3 or 4 o'clock wherever you are. If you go to sleep in 8 hours at midnight, the caffeine you're drinking now is not even half metabolized. It's still in your system. And what caffeine does is it has multiple mechanisms, that it blocks the adenosine receptors in your brain. Adenosine is a compound that builds up in our brains throughout the day, and it causes some sense of fatigue. It's not a bad thing. It's just how our bodies are telling us you are awake. We have this wake-sleep cycling, and while we're sleeping, our brains are regenerating in some ways. We have this incredible network of lymphatic drainage in the brain called the lymphatic system that pulls waste products out of our brain. And so it's important that we know when we are sleepy. Caffeine is masking that, but your brain is still sleepy under the surface. And so if you're drinking caffeine at 8 in the morning, by the time you go to sleep, you may have a quarter of that caffeine in your system, which can still disrupt sleep architecture. Drinking caffeine at 3 or 4 in the afternoon is a little bit more of a dangerous proposition in terms of sleep architecture. So that's just the first thing to consider about caffeine. There was a recent study that I saw.
I did a video on how bad it is for you to just not pay attention to when to go to bed. Like, I had so much carnivore energy that I was staying up for this past year. I was staying up till like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was getting up at 5 and going to work, and I was doing that a lot. And I woke up, my blood pressure was out of whack. So he's right about sleep architecture, because there's a reason we need to get our butts in the bed and get a decent amount of sleep. It is really important. And I think I really knew that, but I never listened to it until just recently, and I had what had happened to me. It scared the crap out of me, because I woke up, my blood pressure was just through the roof all of a sudden, but it was because I was exhausted. I mean, I had been, but my body, it's like I kept going because I have so much energy on carnivore, but I was just wearing myself down because I wasn't getting enough sleep, like big time not getting enough sleep. It was ridiculous. So he's right about that.
That talked about in sleep deprivation, which is this time when a lot of people use caffeine. If you don't give someone caffeine, there are changes in the gray matter in the brain, right? So you have white matter and gray matter in the brain. And there are certain regions of the brain where the gray matter sort of expands when you are sleep deprived. It's just probably the brain trying to heal itself and push back against the damage that sleep deprivation is doing to your brain. Caffeine blunts that. So the concern here is that if you're using caffeine to ameliorate your sensation of a sleep deprived state, you could be preventing your brain from doing the necessary healing that it's trying to do when you are sleep deprived, because caffeine is blunting the expansion of gray matter in certain parts of the brain when you are sleep deprived. So it's a very powerful substance for humans that I think has been used throughout history for good and bad. I mean, I think I'm no history buff, but I think a lot of amazing, beautiful art and things have happened throughout history because of caffeine and coffee. And so great, fantastic. And other compounds related to caffeine, methylxanthines that occur in chocolate and things like this. It can certainly put humans into ecstatic states or creative states, but we just need to be very honest with ourselves about what it might be doing to our brains long-term. If we use it for sleep deprivation, or if we're using it too close to sleep, it could be causing issues. The last thing I'll say is that the coffee that a lot of people drink caffeine in, not necessarily tea, but the coffee can be moldy, right? So you want to find a coffee that's mold-free, pesticide-free. You got to be careful with the vessel through which you're drinking the caffeine. And then I'm just a bundle of joy. When people hear me talk, they just say, oh, you ruin everything for me. There are certain tea bags that are made from plastic. So if you're using a caffeinated tea, please do not use a tea bag made from plastic, because those are known to release millions, or sometimes an order of magnitude greater than that, billions of microplastics into your water.
Oh, and you want to hear something else? Like, one thing I did do, if I drink coffee, I put it in, I have a stainless steel, like, K-cup holder, because there's nothing, I think there's so many things that are probably worse, but in terms of microplastics, when you are putting a Keurig into one of those K-cup, the Keurig coffee makers, you're using just the pods made out of that flimsy plastic, yeah, you are eating a lot of microplastics, and they're finding that in the human body, and these, you've got all the issues of forever chemicals, and they're finding microplastics in these clots after autopsy and all this kind of stuff. It's really scary, and this is convenience. All of this is about convenience. So I did get, when I do drink coffee, I get I got a stainless steel K-cup holder, and I put the coffee into the K-cup holder, the loose coffee, and that way it's 316 like stainless steel, so I'm not getting all of any kind of plastics in my drink. So, because that really bothers me, like drinking out of plastic bottles and things like that. It is really detrimental to your health to be sucking down any kind of microplastics. That's really horrible, and it's one of the things that you don't hear talked about that much. But
so putting plastic into hot or boiling water is the worst thing we could do for microplastics. And so there are all sorts of considerations around caffeine that thanks for letting me share that.
But when we have this like level of individual diligence that you are blessedly offering us the opportunity to be that aware of, well, are you sure that do you want to eat this tea bag? You know, I can imagine that if I spent, and I'm going to actually, like, you know, I'm going to say if I spent an hour listening to you or a week listening to you, and I know there's far too much knowledge in you for you to get across in one podcast, but I suppose that really I've sort of changed my agenda in the course of just the first 20 minutes to, I'm going to need to maximally benefit from this time that I have with Paul. Because I remember you saying before, like, even if you only ate McDonald's meat, that's better than not eating meat at all. That's one of the things that kind of struck me about our last interaction. What I would say...
It's like Dr. Barry saying, if you want to try to do the carnivore diet and you can't afford like fancy panda massage, like grass-fed beef and all this kind of stuff, he's like, well, just get bologna and hot dogs, because it's not ideal, but it's way better than the standard American diet. And he's right about that. You have to look at what you can do and when you can do it. So...
like I'd like to learn now is, like, you know, I do, like, say I've got a boy, my little boy, he's 2, he had like a heart condition, he's got a condition called DeGeorge. Like, say I eat sometimes, when I say sometimes, I mean last night, Tony's chocolate, right? I was eating it cold out the fridge. Oh man, it's so delicious. Like, anyway, my little boy comes up to me, and my wife don't like him to have chocolate, but he knows what chocolate is now, and so, you know, the genie's out of the bottle. I'm letting him have, like, I'm giving him like bits of this Tony's chocolate, which I feel like is kind of branding itself as, this is good for you chocolate. If I knew everything that you know about chocolate, would I give my son with a heart condition, he had like surgery and everything, would I give him chocolate or not?
What time was it that you were giving him chocolate? Was it early in the day or late in the day?
It was like, oh gosh, I'm sorry to say that it was 8 p.m. Earliest.
Okay. Well, late in the day is tough for kids because, like I mentioned, chocolate does have these methylxanthines, which are the same compounds, similar compounds to caffeine. So it can affect his sleep, which is then going to affect your sleep if he's not sleeping well. Chocolate is an interesting thing. So chocolate's tricky. There definitely are studies suggesting that chocolate has compounds, flavonoids, that could be beneficial at a vascular health level, at the endothelium in your blood vessels, and it may have benefits long-term. Most chocolate is packaged with processed sugar, which is a little tricky, right? We can pretty confidently say that a processed sugar, sucrose, is not.
No, it's not tricky. It's bad, like really bad. Anything in a processed food, you should stay the hell away from. Just say, it's kind of simple, honestly, but I think he's trying to be really nice and pleasant here.
Not a great thing for humans. I think the Tony's chocolate, all these chocolates have sucrose. If you really wanted to make chocolate the healthiest way you could get a 100% dark chocolate and combine it with something like honey. And I think there's a really interesting divergence between the outcomes in humans and the way that natural sugars like honey and fruit affect us versus a processed sugar like a sucrose or a table sugar. These are really different things. And so if you took a dark...
He actually gets into a lot of arguments with other carnivore people because that's not typically in the carnivore paradigm, you know, because he's eaten so many carbs and sugary carbs at that. Like, it's not... You know, it's not even keto, and I think he eats 200 to 300 grams a day. So this is just, if you don't know that much about Paul Saladino, like, this is just something to know that this is his thing. He's like the honey guy now, but honey and fruit and stuff like that. So, but mostly meat, just 200 to 300 grams of honey and fruit, I believe.
chocolate and you combine it with honey, I would argue that's better for humans than like a processed sugar containing chocolate. The other considerations with chocolate are that chocolate can be fairly high in heavy metals. It's not going to kill you. And we're talking about things like lead, mercury, and arsenic, and cadmium especially in chocolate. But if you eat a lot of chocolate, it's just meaning check your heavy metals, because the seeds of plants, and chocolate is made from plant cacao seeds that are roasted, the seeds of plants do tend to concentrate heavy metals. And again, I don't mean to be a killjoy. I'm equipping people as much as I can with the tools to make their own sovereign decisions in their life. Nothing is quite black and white. So if you're eating a chocolate, just check that it is tested for heavy metals and these kind of things also. And potentially be aware that the sucrose in there, the processed sugar in the chocolate, is not great, but there's an easy way to fix that, which is you take 100% dark chocolate and you combine it with honey. And I can speak about that if you'd like, but there are ways to make it better, and there are some considerations with chocolate as well.
What do you think, even though I know it's sort of like partly shtick, I am actually getting angry with you because you're one by one like removing so many of the you're demolishing the architecture of my comfort with your every announcement. But also, Paul, we do need to wake up. We need to wake up. I don't want to live in darkness. So like you were a significant factor. You and Bear Grylls were probably the most significant influences in me deciding to start eating meat. And it was kind of concomitant with my coming to Christ as well. So I'm so quite actually interestingly, having listened to the earlier part of the conversation when you were talking about the sacraments and sanctity with the idea of the flesh and the blood of Christ, that there is some kind of spiritual correlative to this incontrovertibly, not incontrovertibly, but somehow inextricably. I'd like to ask you this then. I'd like to ask you this. Like in general, say me, I am drinking a lot of caffeine. I'm drinking like sparkling water. I know there's probably microplastics in this. If at an individual level we're like being polluted, even if you're someone like me who's economically advantaged, albeit autodidactically educated, like what chance have we got? And I mean this in a MAHA context, because I guess it was a DC event where we encountered each other briefly other than our interview there. Like what should be the role of Make America Healthy Again? What should be the role of government in facing up to big food, big agriculture, and I guess big pharma as well, of course. But like, if we lived like just you explaining to me as an individual, well, this is what you should feed your children. I'm immediately thinking, don't give your children anything other than organic whole food. And we've thankfully got a really good water filter in our house already for even the shower water and the drinking water. Probably there's got to be some supplementation. If that's what, you can do that as an individual and we can do that as a family, and by God I will. But what does that tell us about our culture, where what's been normalized is junk food and food dyes and preservatives and pesticides in the food chain? Aren't we like ultimately poisoning and toxifying ourselves at beyond an industrial level, almost at a universal level?
Yeah, that's why everybody's so sick, is because we view that as being normal. So he's actually right on the money with that. So one of the things that could be done is if RFK actually does turn the food pyramid upside down. Can you imagine, like, if they started feeding the troops more of a meat-heavy diet and got rid of the processed, type foods, and way less grains, even if you're going to continue to eat that kind of stuff, like eat way less of it, because the food pyramid is not, it needs to be upside down, because it's ridiculous. You need to have a lot more meat and a lot less of the processed grains and things like that. So if he can even do that, that would be monumental, because it does impact, because the schools have to listen to the government. I mean, we don't listen to the government. I don't run out and look at the food pyramid to see what to eat. But schools do. Everything's governed. And then that's controlled by money. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No. Doubtful, because these are politicians. I don't know if they're just going to put a little sentence there and say, hey, you might want to try a low-carb diet or something like that. That's what I would figure is going to happen. But who knows? Stranger things have happened.
Absolutely, we are. And it sounds hyperbolic when we say it, or it sounds inflammatory, but it's really, I think it's really true. I
Sounds
think
evil.
yeah. I think I've begun to see it like this, Russell. I've begun to see it as like there are foods that are for humans and there are foods that are not for humans. And if you eat food for humans,
And processed food is not food, it's Franken food. That's what I call it, because it's not, it's like a creation. It's not food. Food is something you kill or something you grow if you're eating plants, but it's not whatever the heck this crap is that they're making in a lab.
I would define as single ingredient foods. So meat and plants, right? Single ingredient foods, milk, eggs, fish, chicken, Brussels sprouts, whatever, potatoes. These are single ingredient foods, or foods with labels that your great grandmother would recognize everything on the label. That's sort of just my working framework for food for humans. If you do that, and based on our previous part of the conversation, this is important to share with your audience. Like, I'm not trying to take away things from people or make it impossible. So the food for humans framework is quite broad. But I want people to understand this. I strongly believe, and this is something that I am so passionate about at this moment in my life and my career. And I think this is in line with the MAHA movement. The Western medical system will not tell you this, but I believe that if you eat food for humans, you can correct or reverse the majority of chronic illness that we suffer from as humans today. And it's as simple as that. I mean, I'm writing.
And that's why a lot of these illnesses, like you see autoimmunity, fibromyalgia, all these mysterious things, and they don't even know what it is or why it's happening, and they can't fix it and they can't cure it, and all they can do is like heavily medicate you. For instance, I had fibromyalgia. I was diagnosed with that, and I took a narcotic for 17 years of my life because I would hurt too bad if I didn't. And I ate meat for 3 days actually no, I think that went away in about a week, but I was too scared to stop taking my medicine. I stopped taking my medicine, though, after a month. 17 years. I poisoned myself with that. So a lot of these things, like you'll hear autoimmune conditions, these weird things they don't even know how to explain and they don't understand, is because of the food that we're eating. The food is making us sick, because how else would I have cured 7 medical conditions? And the whole time, all the doctors, all the money I spent, all of the visits, all of the treatments, like nothing worked. None of the vegan diet worked. Like, I tried the vegan diet, I tried keto, I tried all the other diet, but when I went carnivore, that worked. So, I mean, it's something to think about for real.
A book about this now, and I want to get that message out there because as a traditionally trained medical doctor, I have an MD. That was never taught to me in medical school, that so many of the chronic health conditions that we suffer from autoimmune conditions like multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, Sjogren's, autoimmune thyroid conditions. I had eczema. Some people have skin conditions like psoriasis. Autoimmune conditions are rampant. Chronic illnesses like obesity, diabetes, atherosclerosis. So many of these conditions that we suffer from chronically as humans are fixable if we just eat food for humans. And so this is wild to me that the Western medical system is not doing this. And I think this is exactly the intersection of the government and MAHA in this problem, is that, hey, look, if you're making it okay, or you're not at least telling people, hey, if you eat food that is not for humans, which is this, this myriad of ultra processed foods, you are going to be sick. It's as simple as that. I think we've been I think that in some ways the calories model has been quite misleading for people. We've thought, oh, as long as I just don't eat too many calories, I'm going to be okay. No, you cannot out exercise.
And losing weight is not the same as becoming healthy. I think that too often, like, I know the way I used to view it, and I have a background, I've worked in hospitals and in pharmaceuticals for over 30 years, and I had the right background and everything. And I always thought of it as like, well, if I can just lose any extra weight I have and get down to my goal weight, like, that was it. That's all I was thinking about. I wasn't really thinking about anything else or whether or not I was getting proper nutrition. It's just how skinny I was. So I think a lot of people make that same mistake and think that.
The toxins and the sort of artificial, confusing ingredients and compounds in an Oreo simply by doing the amount of exercise that burns off the calories in an Oreo. These things get stuck in our cells and our membranes. They affect our gut flora, which is the problem with sucrose. Processed sugar, it affects your gut flora in a negative way. So I want people to understand that, hey, you can, if you have the right as an American to go to Dunkin' Donuts and to eat a donut, right? But if you simply cannot just exercise to burn off those 200 calories, it doesn't work that way. All those toxins are negatively affecting your cells in your body in a way that has amplified effects long-term, or at least reverberating effects long-term.
We lost Paul for a moment there, but he's back, and I'm really glad of the opportunity to talk to you. Paul, I wanted to run you through some of my new products from Reborn and to get your absolute insight. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of variation in this, so like, as far, I just mean in general, the product, bovine colostrum. Is that a good idea?
Colostrum's great. There's actually good data with doses of 2 to 3 grams of colostrum per day in terms of gut health, immune health. Yeah, colostrum is the first milk from cows. And usually when they're collecting colostrum, I mean, they always leave enough for the calves. It's interesting that across species, the immunoglobulins in colostrum are beneficial for humans, probably for the gut and recovery in general. So yeah, colostrum's amazing. Like, animals are incredibly valuable for humans, man. They make all kinds of nutrient-rich foods.
And like I said, an animal is making it, so I consider it carnivore. You know, if you want to be SpongeBob, go out in the middle of the ocean and you want to milk a jellyfish, have at it, because it came from an animal. So, just saying.
What about creatine powder? Is that good?
Creatine is great. There's been a lot of buzz about creatine recently. Doses from 5 to 20 grams a day have been studied to find benefit. 5 grams a day of creatine is beneficial probably for muscle strength, recovery, explosivity. 10 grams a day has been studied for osteoporosis in women. So I think about this for my mom, who's 75 years old. So if you have someone in your life who has bone density issues, you might go up a little bit, 8 or 10 grams of creatine a day. 20 grams of creatine is a mega dose that I wouldn't do every day, but there is some evidence that in the setting of sleep deprivation, 20 grams of creatine might push more creatine across the blood-brain barrier and help with cognition. Now, I mentioned creatine is something that only occurs in animal foods, but in order for you to get 5 grams of creatine a day, you'd have to eat probably 2 pounds of meat per day. Most of us are not eating 2 pounds of meat per day, so it's a valuable compound that is made by the body, but supplementation appears to be very beneficial for humans, and it's incredibly safe. There's really no evidence that it has any issues with the kidneys or anything, so
really,
creatine's amazing.
Because I was a bit worried about my kidneys. I went to have a test to see whether or not I should get supplemented testosterone, and it came back that I had a word that sounds a bit like creatine, but isn't creatine. I bet you know what that word is. Like creatinine. It was like, yeah, that. And I was like, oh no. And the doctor said, come off the creatine for a bit. And I'm really I want to get back on the creatine. I want to get back on it. Do you think it does affect the kidneys? Can affect the kidneys?
No, it doesn't affect the kidneys at all. So I need to counsel your doctor on this. You can send in this part.
It's sad that doctors are that stupid, because you have to be really pretty stupid to think that.
So one of the breakdown products of creatine is creatinine, but creatinine is not harmful to the body itself. Creatinine is a compound that we use to estimate your glomerular filtration rate. And so in kidney disease, people's creatinine will go up. Creatinine is a breakdown product from the muscles, from the creatinine in the muscles. But creatinine is just a marker for kidney function. So if you're eating more meat, if you have more muscles, or you are taking more creatine, your creatinine will go up, but that doesn't mean you have any issues with your kidneys. Your doctor needs to get a separate test. It's called a cystatin C, which is not affected by creatine at all. So creatine will falsely elevate creatinine. Creatinine is not harmful for you, but because we use creatinine levels to estimate your glomerular filtration rate. The glomeruli are these little cellular organelles, macrocellular organelles in the kidney where you filter your blood and it turns into urine. But the amount of sort of plasma that the glomeruli in your kidneys can filter is how we estimate how well your kidneys are functioning. And creatinine can cause confusion there, but it's not harmful. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. I'm actually struggling not to fall in love with you, especially when I'm looking at your biceps. And I say that as a heterosexual man. I'm looking at the vascularity and the muscle mass. I'm like using this for such obvious personal stuff now. I literally will start taking creatine again. And thankfully, I've got my own brand of it now because I'd stopped it during that time. I can't believe the success of your books, the Carnivore Code and the Carnivore Code Cookbook. And now, what is your latest book and what are you tackling? How are you going to change society now? You've turned me from a vegan to a carnivore with your meddling. Now, where are you dragging us next, Saladino?
I bought a sort of rundown hotel on the beach, and I'm going to renovate it, and I'm going to make it into what I think will be the most based hotel in the world. We're going to have red lights and sauna, cold plunge, a pool with no chlorine, ozone. We're going to serve grass-fed meat and raw milk. So I'll keep you posted about that. You guys got to come down and see my hotel. It's going to be a few months to renovate it, but I bought a hotel on the beach here, and it needs a little renovation. And then I'm going to make a place for people to come together, because I feel like the other piece of this is community. And we're going to this increasingly digitized world, and that bothers me. You know, I wish we could do this in person. I hope we get to hang out again in person soon, but humans need community, and we need to be together in person with people. And so I wanted to create a space in the world. It's going to be humble. It's not grand. I didn't buy like a freaking, Four Seasons, but I bought a small space for people to come together and just be united around shared values on the beach here in Dominical, Costa Rica. So that's exciting.
Dominical. Do you think it's going to be more like retreats rather than just rock up and come and stay?
I'm hearing drum circles again. Just saying. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll be good.
At Paul Saladino's hotel.
We'll see. I kind of like the idea of both. I do an animal-based gathering every year, which isn't really a retreat as much as it is just a community building thing here in Costa Rica. Anyone can come. The details of that are at AB. Actually, you go to animalbasedgathering.com, I think, or .org, animalbasedgathering.org if you want details about that. I don't make any money from that. All the money goes to my nonprofit. But I do sort of like a retreat type thing every year in Costa Rica. I think I want to do them quarterly at the hotel, but I also just want to have a space where people can just arrive, and the chances that you're going to meet people that have shared values around living a certain way and prioritizing health, community, nutrient-dense foods, and probably other values of living, getting out of the matrix, non-digital, life. That's exciting to me, because I think that would be cool to me. If I knew there was somewhere in the world, whether it's Costa Rica or Sweden or wherever, that I could go and there's going to be people that are just there that have shared values, that's amazing. Meeting new people is so valuable for humans. So it'll be both.
I'd like to think that your girlfriend works at like KFC and like eats like Twizzlers and like Nerds and like cans of Tab. Paul Saladino falls in love with like a woman that lives entirely on red dye and fake foods. Oh man, it's so you should. I tell you, you're going to make even more. I know you've made an incredible impact and had incredible success already, and I know that you righteously understand it to be something that's kind of flowing through you. But I'm very, very interested in seeing what future success you have and what else you do.
Come to Costa Rica, brother. I'll see you here. Yeah.
I've just got back from El Salvador, man. That place is pretty crazy. And I went to Costa Rica not that long ago. I'm going to come there. I'm going to come with like Hiron Gracie and some like Bear Grylls. I'm going to come there with a bunch of badasses.
The hotel that I bought has a huge yoga deck upstairs. So we could put mats down. You guys could just roll. It's a huge open space. We could put mats. We could do a big jiu-jitsu seminar there. It's amazing. And it looks right out at the ocean. It's incredible. Whoa. It's a huge space. Yeah, we'll have grass-fed meat, raw milk. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's for me. That's the kind of thing I dream about now. It used to be like cocaine and heroin and sex workers. Now it's Paul Saladino and a cold plunge. That'll do me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And some jiu-jitsu with sweaty dudes. Yep.
Yeah. They're very good at jiu-jitsu. Oh man. All right. Well, Paul, thank you very much for joining us today on Stay Free.
Thank you for having me on. I'll just tell you this, guys, because we don't even, the hotel is so new. I don't even have a website, but it's going to be called Humano, like human in Spanish. So the hotel is going to be called Humano. So if you just search Humano Dominical, Costa Rica. Eventually we will have a website and people will be able to come in a few months once we get it renovated.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be
I
glorious.
can't wait.
I know it
It's
is.
going to be great.
I know it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
I'm going to be in touch with you. I'm serious about that thing. Well, that's all the time that we've got. What an interview. What an ending. What a show. What a guy. The abs are coming through. I've never felt healthier. Thank you so much to Paul Saladino, and thanks for you. We will be back for a live show at this time, at this date, on this day. Not for more of the same, but for more of the different. Until then, if you can, stay free.
So that was really interesting. Well, a lot of it, and a lot of it was really boring because that's the thing. Like Paul Saladino will go off in chemistry nerddom like pretty fast, and I mean, not that I don't. Maybe it's just me because like you know, when you've heard all of this before, you understand all of this, and this is like my day-to-day life. It's like it kind of puts me to sleep. I mean, but maybe it's interesting to some people. I left. You know, this is not the whole interview, so I'll actually put a link in the description below of the entire thing. So go check out the rest of it because these are just highlights. But I thought it was interesting because Paul Saladino is very different from what I think he was like 5 years ago. You know, everybody changes, everybody, I don't know, evolves into something different. And he really, compared to what he used to do, I mean, he was literally running around like kind of acting like a jackass a lot of the times. And I think he was just trying to do like goofy content or something. I don't know, but he's a much more, I don't know, serious and measured person now. And a lot of people really looked at him as being fake and all kind of stuff because, and that's, I didn't know, honestly. And I don't really know that tremendously much about him, honestly. Like, I can't tell you what his true intentions are or whatever, but I've heard a lot of very based stuff coming out of him recently. And it was shocking to me because if you look back at what he kind of was before, it's just very different. So it's worth giving him a listen, you know. Again, I don't even follow him. I don't follow his channel or anything. But you know, and all I really knew about him is that he was one of the OG, I think, carnivore guys, and then he started eating a bunch of honey and whatever, you know. And I know he's like a athlete and all this kind of stuff. So, but interesting. He said a lot of interesting things, and I think he's being very honest about. This is the thing I appreciate is he being very honest about how big ag, big food, big pharma is poisoning the crap out of us, and they're doing it knowingly. So he's one of the few people that will come out and say that. A lot of the other physicians will hem and haw and pussyfoot around, and like Norwitz will say things like, "Well, I'm sure they don't mean it intentionally," and things like that, or you know. Like it's a big old accident and gee whiz, you know, like, we didn't know cigarettes were going to kill you, you know, that kind of thing. So you get those vibes from a lot of these physicians, but then there's the based doctors like Dr. Barry who say, hey, you know, he doesn't say that it's a grand conspiracy, but he comes out and says, you know, hey, there are people who know better and there are people who control the strings. And they're keeping things the status quo for a reason. Like they don't want change, you know, and it comes down to the bottom line or whatever. But that's the thing about Paul Saladino is recently he sounded a lot more like Dr. Barry than, you know, a lot of these other, I don't know, academics. And I'm not digging on Nick Norwitz because I think he's great, but I think he's 1 foot into the establishment and 1 foot out, if that makes any sense, you know. And a lot of these people can't say certain things or they're going to get their license taken away and stuff. You know, I mean, there's consequences for speaking out, you know, outside of the matrix, so to speak. But Dr. Barry and Paul Saladino, I think, are still friends. Like, they're friendly with each other. They're colleagues or whatever. They talk. So I don't think he's nuts or anything. A lot of people were kind of looking at Paul Saladino like he was a nutbag, you know, after he started eating honey. Or I don't know, maybe it was after he started running around the grocery store with no shoes and no shirt and harassing people. I don't know. I honestly don't know the history of that guy, but who knows? It's worth watching. And I thought it was interesting that talking to Russell Brand. It was just a trippy conversation. Like I said, I keep imagining drum circles like popping up out of nowhere. So just between the two of them, because they're both peculiar individuals in different ways. But let me know what you think about all of this, and what you think the future of his human hotel is going to be like. Do you think that they're going to have drum circles? I don't know. I know I'm poking fun at hippies. I can't help it. I cannot help it. It's just something that I have to do.
What are they, Dad?
They're hippies, son.
It's just funny. But again, like, what do you think about all of this? What do you think about the MAHA stuff? Do you think that there's actually going to be any traction with this MAHA stuff? I mean, do you think Bobby Kennedy's going to turn the pyramid upside down? Think that's going to happen? Do you think they're just going to put a footnote there and say, hey, you might want to try a low-carb diet, or that might be acceptable? So there's a lot of movement, but again, it's the swamp and it's politics. So, I never expect much. Let's just say that. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I'll be really looking forward to hearing it. And if you like this video, if you could give me a like, I'd really appreciate it. And do subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future content or live streams. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.